Hey everyone, welcome back to SheRocks College Live. So, want to learn how to make your graduate, medical school, dental school, or law school applications stand out from the crowd? What if your application made such an impact that you landed yourself a full scholarship in the process? Well, we're going to be talking all about that and more tonight. On SheRocks College Live, we'll be chatting with Shawna-Kaye Lester, a graduate school admissions expert who's helped students get into schools like Columbia, MIT, and Amherst, while also helping them earn over $3 million in scholarships. So let's go ahead and get into the show.
Hi, Clarissa.
Hey, Shana, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
You're welcome. Hi, Clarissa. I love the music. I was dancing.
Yeah, it's so good. I did that in like 5 minutes. I hired someone online to do it.
Okay, well, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. So, Shana, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell everyone what it is that you do and how you got started as a graduate school admissions expert.
Sure. All right. Hi, everyone. Hi to Clarissa's SheRocks College community. So the way I got started in this field actually was at my undergraduate institution. Funnily enough, I started helping people get into college while I was still in college, working in the admissions office actually. And we had a weekend where we invited to campus students who we wanted to come. And there was this one student I remember who I met. He was staying with someone else. Someone else was hosting him. But I met him and I thought to myself, wow, this is such an amazing young man. He speaks all these languages. He's really kind. He loves sports. He's an artist. He went with me to my physics class even I did not want to go to, and he was just so involved. So I thought, all right, this one, we have to choose him. I really, really, really want him to come. And when his visit was over, the program was called Prologue. And when Prologue was over, I said to him, Udi, can I see your application? Because I just think you're so perfect for this school. And when I saw it, I really panicked because at the time I was actually working in admissions and the development office. And I knew how competitive it was for various reasons to get a place at my school. And his application just seriously undersold who he was. It was just like all of these languages, the sports guy, the art guy, the one who's in the front of the physics class was not on the paper. And so I worked with him to revamp his application, and some months later he got in. And he actually works in college admissions now, ironically or funnily, so that was the very start. And then I went on to work in the office as a senior admission fellow, interviewing people on behalf of the deans of admissions, helping them to choose before going on to college counseling. And then, of course, when you follow your students, they go on to graduate school. And I myself, I applied to graduate school. I went to Columbia for journalism and for public health. And so all of that came together over the years, starting to work on college and graduate admissions together. So that's the short version.
Yeah, but even before then, I was reading on your website as I was refreshing myself on all the accomplishments that you've had. You said that you realized the power of writing when you had applied for that application to win money for you wanted money for a computer and a camera.
Oh my gosh, okay, you went way back.
Yes,
all right, yeah. Wow, okay, that's a very thorough research. I think that story might be on the very first education project I ever did, something called Eagles Breakaway. Wow, okay. So yeah, before I Memorable Essay, I was very into having students. That's some thorough research, Clarissa. Sorry, I'm impressed. I was very into students telling their stories and really motivating each other. And yeah, my love for writing itself outside of the admissions process comes from being a teenager. And back then when computers were a big thing and Word and cell phones and who has the flip and who has the razor, I entered an essay competition actually on Nigeria, talking about Nigeria as the giant of Africa for their independence, and I won it locally in Jamaica. And at the time it was a big deal because I got $10,000, which was just so much money to me. And I really, really wanted, like Carissa said, to buy my own computer because I actually hadn't even written that application essay on my computer. I was sleeping over a neighbor's house to get it done for the competition, and I realized, wow, you could write something and put lots of money in your pocket, and so that's how I really got into, writing as a way of changing your life. That's excellent, Clarissa. Nobody has ever asked me that question before. That's some good homework. No, I'm serious. Like radio, TV, nothing. You found that story.
Yeah. It's the Virgo in me.
Okay.
So Shana, so tonight, what I thought we could focus on is the application process and really what it takes to have your application stand out. Because especially when we're dealing with graduate school programs, or we're dealing with medical school, or we're dealing with PhD programs and things like that, everybody has the GPA. Because it's like the minimum requirement to get in, and that's typically the first thing that everybody looks at. But what I really want to talk about is, how do colleges pick out the students who are actually going to get accepted in the program outside of just a GPA. And if you're a student who is competing with everyone else who has a 4.0 and is involved in a bunch of internships and has a million things to make them, quote unquote sellable, or wantable. I don't think that's a word, but we'll go
desirable.
What's going to help them in their application to really stand out? What makes a memorable statement?
Yeah, sure. And so within the graduate school realm, I know your ladies and your community, they're all college people heading to graduate school. There's going to be a whole lot of nuance, as I was kind of alluding to that earlier. So there'll be differences if you're applying to master's programs versus PhD programs versus professional programs. So you'll find that some of the professional programs and basically every PhD program will be asking you for a research statement, or more of a statement of purpose, which will have more technical detail. So for instance, let's say you're into neuroscience or something, and you need to write a research statement about neuroscience. That's not what I'm talking about, right? So I'm not talking about that personal document. I'm talking about that document where every master's program basically, and some PhD programs and professional programs like med school, nurse school, dental school, law school, so on, they're going to ask you essentially, why do you want to come here? Why should we choose you? What do you want to do with your career in the future? And that's where you really have a chance to distinguish yourself, and you absolutely should. And that's whether you are going for scholarship money or not, or you're just going for a place in the graduate school. And I say that because oftentimes we find, and I think your students will find, I don't want to over project, but I think your students will find that as career women, I'm going to go ahead and say women since it's SheRocks, right? You'll have these years, I swear, that just fly by. It's like you go to college and then people are like, you should go to grad school, and then you go to grad school, and then it's like, you should get a job, and you just go to the job. And if you're not careful, you find that you're just tumbling through life, just doing the next thing, doing the next thing, doing the next thing. And so actually applying to grad school, and I've had so many of my clients say this, really is a moment to just stop and take stock and be like, one, do I want to go? Everybody's saying I should go. One, do I want to go? Do I want to go now? Where do I want to go? Why do I want to go? And all of that comes out when you start thinking about writing a personal statement. So the very first step, actually, which is what I just alluded to, is being clear. Just taking the time to think, am I going to do this because I really want to do this? Am I going to dental school because I feel like I can make a huge difference in the field of dentistry? Am I going into nursing because I feel like something will be missing if I, Clarissa, or if I, Jane, do not become a nurse? Is that why I'm going, right? Does that make me want to get out of the bed in the morning, right? Yeah. And so once you figure out, like, yeah, I'm going to go, you want to start asking yourself why. Like, when was that first time that you fell in love with nursing? When was that first time that you fell in love with business or with psychiatry? What are the things that you saw growing up? Recently, I was talking with someone, and she found me because she grew up in Central America and she lives elsewhere now in the US, but there's certain things that she saw growing up even as a little girl that they're still with her and they're in her heart now, and they're pushing her to go to grad school. And so you really want to take some time to connect with those early moments and to trace the evolution so that you can then tell those stories to other people and be like, this is why I want this. Actually, this is why I need this. And not to put other people down, but this is why you should give it to me over the next person. So it's a lot of self-reflection. It's identifying the stories that really show the core of who you are. And then when it comes to the writing piece now, it's these different writing tools that you use to communicate that. And as Clarissa knows, this is not a cheap plug, but I really do have a workbook that explains all of that, all of the steps and all of the tools, but I will bring up some now that are the main ones. And that's definitely clarity. You have to be clear about why you want this opportunity, why you're going to this particular place to have this opportunity, and what's going to be different in the world if you get this opportunity, right? Like, why you?
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because this is something that I'm always like reiterating to them. It's like, why did you enroll in college in the first place? Why are you here? Yeah. Why does this matter? Why are you spending so much money to get this diploma? Like, how is it going to change your life? So the fact that that's the first thing that you talked about, I think it's awesome, because, you know, sometimes you need to hear things from other people in order for it to stick. So it's great that they're hearing it from someone outside of me, really showing them the importance of connecting down to that why, that purpose, the thing that's going to drive them forward.
Yes, absolutely. And you know, some programs are easier than others, but a lot of graduate school programs are really tough. Mm-hmm. They demand for you to call on some deep reserves inside of you. And so it's like, if you don't have a great big why, you might really find yourself struggling through the program, right? So in terms of writing, and when you are clear, you're able to communicate that clearly. So that first writing tool would be your clarity. And as I said before, also your use of anecdotes. You want to be authentic. And you want to be specific. So I read a lot of personal statements and a lot of admission essays, things that I hear all the time. I have always wanted to. It is my purpose to. It is my destiny to. It's like, you know, these things just really don't hold any water. You want to instead talk about things like, yeah, when I was 7, my sister got infected with dengue fever, right? Or when I was 10, this thing happened to my mother and I don't like the way that the law handled it. Or I know you, Clarissa, you even had a personal story, right, about why you went into nursing with your younger brother and so on. You want to really pinpoint those specific moments and then communicate them to people. The one thing I will add, which is why I think your ladies have a tremendous, tremendous advantage in, is that a lot of the richness of personal statements, especially for me, comes from storytelling. And that's something like math or music. It's love. It's cross-cultural. It doesn't matter what language you speak, what color, you know, your skin is, which direction your hair goes in. Your culture has storytelling. And you as a person probably love a good story, right? Whether that's a form of a movie or just talking with your friends. And so it's one of those things I like to tell people, like a kiss in a movie, right? We put kisses in every movie because kisses work and people go, ah. You put stories in every personal statement that's about you because they work and people will go, ah. However, to get a good story and to get a great story, where your ladies have an advantage is that they're still in college. So I advise people, especially for people who have the option of taking courses broadly, so maybe not 30 courses that are unrelated to what you're doing, but 1 or 2, to really take a different course, right? And to open your mind up to something that is perhaps not your main field of study. So that really broadens the richness of your college experience academically and gives you more of a perspective. So you become somebody who can talk about healthcare not just from a health perspective, but from a politics perspective, from an econ perspective, from, I don't know, like a gender perspective sort of thing. And then also outside of the actual academic study, the activities that you get yourself involved in. And these don't have to be activities that take a whole semester or 4 semesters. It might just be a 1-day shadowing, right, of an alum, if that's available through your school, of a peer who's in a different field, of that peer's relative or something. Just try when you're in college. It's a very unique time in your life where you're just around so many people, to really expose yourself to things so you have a richness that you can then communicate in your application.
So step 1 is clarity.
Yes.
Step 2, you're saying, is to take advantage of the college opportunity that you have right now.
In terms of writing the statement? No. So I was saying for your ladies, they just have the advantage because they're still in college.
Gotcha.
So just now, like you all, just take advantage of everything that's available to you. So you become a more interesting person who will have more interesting stories.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes time to write now, I mean, you can't make up the stories anymore. So hopefully you got them in your life and you exposed yourself. When it's time to write, step one is clarity.
Okay.
Clarity of why am I doing this? I am the driving force behind this for graduate school. It can't be your mother, your father, your neighbor, your friend suggested it. I am the driving force behind this decision. I am clear that this is what I want because I've tried this and I don't like it, or because this thing keeps me up at night, or this thing makes me so upset. So I'm clear about why school, why I need this program. That's the first step. The other step is to figure out what the anecdotes are. What are the stories that you're going to tell people? Because stories work. We're not going to fight it. We're going to use it, right? We're going to use it in the process as well. And the third one I had said was the specificity of when you're telling the stories and when you're telling the reasons, to not use general things like I have always wanted to, or it is my destiny to, which sometimes people say those things and it's very tired, right? And it's not enjoyable to read. And there are lots of other things and there are lots of other tools to use, but of course you could have a talk about that. But those I would say are the three most important things.
Perfect. So step one is the clarity. Step two is figuring out what stories you're going to use. And then step three is when you're telling your stories, make sure that you're specific and that you're not speaking in generalities. And what you were saying is that there's feedback, but I'm just going to keep going.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I think it's on my end. But that the college women that I'm working with right now are in an ideal position because they're still, a lot of the time, they still have the opportunity to create stories by getting involved in different things on campus and even just taking other courses so that they get a different perspective of how what it is that they're going into meshes with the different fields that are going around in the world.
Absolutely. Precisely. Mm-hmm.
So one of the questions that I have is, say there's a college student who says, well, I'm not interested in anything on campus, or how do I know what to pick? What kind of advice would you give to them?
All right, and for some reason, I'm so sorry, I can't hear you clearly. You said there's a student who says I'm not interested in what?
In a lot of things on campus, or there's so much that I don't know what to pick that will help me to stand out.
Mm-hmm. Right. That really, if you're somebody who's thinking of going to graduate school or whatever you're thinking of doing next, actually, it's really helpful to find somebody who's 1 or 2 steps ahead of you who can give you advice. And I think that's where such a person would come in. Because if you're not drawn to anything, you probably want to look at why that is. Maybe you're in the wrong place. And this is the field that I work in, but I don't think college and graduate school that there are for everybody. So it's like if that environment really doesn't motivate you and really doesn't make you happy, maybe that's not your key place. If you feel overwhelmed by everything that's available, you can get advice by talking to somebody like me, an admissions consultant, or by finding, as I'm saying, somebody who's 2 steps ahead. So who is in nursing school? Which of the alums from your college are already in nursing school? Who are the people who are in medical school? You can ask them what they did. How did they enjoy it? What did they find most useful, And oftentimes, too, the faculty advisors at school for a specific thing can tell you, as in a lot of people who work in pre-med programs, they'll tell you, join the EMT organization, go and volunteer at the local clinic. So oftentimes the faculty advisors, because they've been writing letters for people and they have these years of experience that let them know what different schools are looking for, they'll be able to tell you. And another thing I think as just a good guiding principle is to really do things where you can have impact, but from the place of you're having impact because it means so much to you. So oftentimes, you might think, okay, I'm going to be a lawyer, so I should join some sort of pre-law club. it's like that's possible, and you could love law, but maybe you're somebody who just loves social justice and you want to work at a local soup kitchen or a local orphanage or something. If you're doing any activity that you're just doing it because you love it so much, that's going to be really good and really powerful for you, because it's something that you can write about from a meaningful place. So just again, as I was saying about knowing yourself, just really kind of follow that feeling of what you feel good doing it. What do you feel like you're really making an impact in when you do this activity? Not just that it's a thing that people said you should do. For instance, I find a lot of students don't know that they don't have to be pre-med to go to med school, right? Yeah. There are some courses that you have to do, like you do your bio, your chem, you knock out your orgo. I mean, like you don't have to be pre-med. You could be anthro, you could be Spanish, you could be Russian, like you be whatever major you want to be that you feel drawn to, and you do the coursework that's necessary to go to medical school and go volunteer in a clinic or in a lab. Or maybe you like old people, like go spend all your Friday evenings with an old lady who needs an assistant, and there's no reason that can't be what you write about when you're applying to med school. So focus on the activities that you really love, subjects you love, activities you love, while doing the required courses.
Yeah, so I tend to attract a lot of perfectionists, and the reason why I ask that question is because I know that one of the things that's probably going to hold them back from the actual application process is, well, I don't know what to pick out of my life to actually write this, what's going to stand out, or they feel like their life is too boring, or they didn't go through any trials that will make them stand out, or, a lot of students will say, well, I didn't really struggle, or there isn't anything interesting about me that would help me to stand out besides my grades. So what advice would you give to students who feel like they don't have stories to actually tell?
That they don't have the grades to stand out, or the profile to stand out?
The profile, the stories. They feel like they're
the story. Okay.
Them.
Yeah, that even if you just think about your own life and about the number of times that something great and exciting happens, right? Like the birth of a new family member, or a wedding, or you get into school. Like those things are few and far between. So the reason I say that is that there's a lot of joy in the mundane. There are a lot of lessons in the mundane, and we really see our character in the mundane. So you don't need for something epic to have happened in your life to be able to write an epic personal statement. And that's something that I say to applicants across everything from college upwards. Actually, this summer I was at my college, Bates College, and I attended an admission session, and our dean was talking about his favorite college essay of all time. These would be grad school statements, but at the time he was talking about college essays, and it was a young lady taking a walk with her grandmother on the beach. And so it's actually really refreshing to find an applicant who's able to recognize that there is all of this power in these mundane, boring activities, but they can reflect deeply on it and show you why it makes them a perfect fit for graduate school. So I would just say talk with somebody who is outside of your immediate circle. Again, that would be somebody like me, somebody else who's into branding or storytelling, and just tell them what you've done and have them tell back to you what makes you amazing. There's a friend of mine, I'll tell you, which is actually, I work with a lot of people who are applying to medical residency, and she is the reason that I got into it, because this was a woman who every day after going to work, she'd come home and tell me the craziest stories, because she's my friend, right?
Yeah.
So she's typing them to me, and it comes time for her to apply for residency match, and she's saying, I don't have anything to write about. And it's just like, how crazy is that? Because I know all of these crazy stories. And we ended up working on her personal statement together, and it wasn't anything about her finding a cure for, ALS or whatever, but it was about how people would just come into the clinic and talk with her. And she is somebody who, she makes you feel so at ease. Those people who they're supposed to be important, but when you go in there, they're just so down to earth that you're just like, oh my goodness, and you want to tell them all your life. And that's her special strength, and we were able to show that by talking about how she would deal with her patients, how they would bring her these bananas in appreciation because of how she just really connected with them. And this one patient who he stayed in the hospital all the time because he didn't have a home, and how they developed this relationship. But to her, it was just her boring life of talking with this patient who stayed at the hospital all the time, and of her patient saying, oh, we love you, but we were able to show her in her natural environment, because the people who are reading that, what they know is that as a doctor, she's not going to be cutting people open every day, but she is going to be talking with patients every day. She is going to be needing to make somebody feel like a human being every day. And so just putting them inside of her world of how that works for her, using the different writing tools, we were able to make her stand out. So just be a decent person and get somebody who can help you to see what's spectacular about your everyday experiences.
Yeah, that's what I love about what it is that you do. So, like, if you're someone who isn't a good writer, you feel like you don't have much to say, when you work with a coach, can I call you that?
Yeah, you can call me
like
that.
an admissions coach. They can ask you questions. Yeah. They can ask you questions that will help draw out of you the things that you might think are not that important, and create an epic story out of, like what Shana said, the things that you think are seemingly insignificant and mundane in your life.
Yeah, they're really not. They're really not.
So, Shana, speaking about that, I would love for you to share with the students who are watching right now how working with you can be helpful in the admissions process, the benefit of it, how you can help them, where they can find out more information of what Memorable Essay is, and how crucial this is if they're serious about getting into their top choice school.
Yeah, sure. So what Memorable Essay is that I work with ambitious individuals, like Clarissa said, who you're looking to go to graduate school, and I help you to stand out in the sea of competition and to get into normally a place that you really care about. Like, I'm all about going for that dream school. And I'm especially interested in working with people. I'm not going to say people who are like me. You know how psychologists say people like people who are like them. But I actually kind of really am interested in working with people who you're going at this more from a standpoint of, how can I use my education to have an impact on the world and to create a legacy that I'm proud of? Like, that's my favorite kind of client, right? So if you're that person, like, you're the person who I'm looking for. And how do we go about helping you stand out is, first of all, we are going to work on 3 very important areas, which I alluded to earlier. The first is clarity. I will be the first person to believe in you. I'll also be the first person to tell you you're not ready. Like, you have no idea what this career is actually about. You're going for all the wrong reasons. You don't even want to go. Look how miserable you are when you think of applying, right? So just to get clear on, yes, this is what I want to do. These are the schools that can best help me accomplish my short and long-term goals. If you want to live in Australia and you're just scared to do it, now might be the time to find only schools in Australia, you know? So figuring out the clarity part. Then we get to strategy. How are you going to go about it? What are the specific things that you need to make this work out for you? So a lot of people are familiar with the idea of getting like a mix of schools. So how do we create a list where you have schools that you're very likely to get into, some that you're, just right, like just the right fit for, and some that feel out of your reach. So it's how we create your list. What's very important for graduate school also are those letters of recommendation. So who do we ask to write for you? Who can write you strong, positive letters in a timely manner is a huge part of your strategy as well. Figuring out if your school allows visits, encourages networking, or if they don't want that sort of thing to happen. So really working on your strategy, and then turning to the application and figuring out, what are we going to say in this personal statement? What story are we going to sell, and how are we going to do it? How are we going to make sure that your CV also complements that? If you're doing a video interview, if you're doing an in-person interview, how do we make sure that all of this is coherent and conveys one main message? So it's your clarity, it's your strategy, and it's the application documents. And anybody who's interested, they can go to memorableessay.com to book a time for us to chat, and then we see if we're a fit, and we take it from there.
Awesome. Shana, thank you so much for being on with us tonight. I apologize that there is feedback, but you sounded clear and beautiful. Thank you again for being on with us tonight. And you said that there was a guide that students could download?
Yeah, sure. So it's how to write a memorable personal statement. And if they go to memorableessay.com, it will be here. So here it is. And I'm actually launching a new version of my site in a few days. So I'm so excited because it will have all of these really great resources. Thanks, Clarissa. And I really encourage people to tell their story. And so on the new site, I do a lot more of exposing people to my story and why I care about this field of work and the difference that it makes. So you can go ahead and grab your free version of this workbook. And what it does, I will quickly explain this, is that the first part of it, which is like the gift on the side, is free because it's so important. And I hate to see when people make this mistake, is that steps 1 to 4. So for instance, step 1, I don't know if you can see, says the reason you want to go. That's the first question, as we were talking about earlier. So steps 1 to 4 is really about you getting clear on the reason you want to go. That's step 1. Step 2 is the reason you are worthy, because you have to know, you have to be very clear yourself about the fact that you are worthy of admission before you expect somebody else to see it. The third one is your unique value proposition. So what is it that you can bring that nobody else can bring? And then the fourth one is your main message. And the main message is really about pulling steps 1 to 4 together into one main message that really summarizes why you should be chosen. And the reason that this is free is because, first of all, as somebody who reads these things, you just after a while get fatigued of seeing people submitting things that don't have a main message. But then also you get to use this, as I'm saying, in the personal statement, in the CV. You get to tell people who you're asking to write on your behalf, hey, this is the big message, this is the big picture, this is what we're communicating. So if you go to the site and you work through these 4 steps, you should be very clear about what you need to communicate to convince somebody to take you into their school, into their university, into their program. So they can go and grab that at www.memorableessay.com right now. Or if you want to wait till next week, which I advise you not to, you'll get the new shiny version. But yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much again for sharing that with our tribe here. So that's it. That's going to conclude the show, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember that we're here every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, providing you with study tips, resources, a community, a safe space for you to meet other college women in their 20s and 30s who are trying to learn skills that are going to help them succeed not only in college but in life. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Bye.
Bye.